Hey YouTube, potential dentist, future dentist hopefully. This is a little video that I made about the DAT soap carving, or the Canadian Dental Aptitude Test soap carving portion. When I was studying for the DATs, I had a pretty rough start with the soap carving initially, getting used to the handling of the soap, the carving, the technique, etc. And slowly I got better as I practiced, and I said that if I did well in the DATs and got into dentistry, I would make a little video to share some of the techniques that I use when I did my carving. And so I was actually accepted into one of the dental programs, and so here I am making this video before I start school. And I hope that if you're out there watching this video trying to prepare for the DATs in November or February, or hopefully October or January preferably, I hope that this might be able to help you a bit and get rid of some of those nerves and replace it with some confidence. So just for some information, I wrote the DATs twice. The first one I wrote in February, and the next one I wrote in November. And as a matter of fact, I received a score of 29 out of 30 on both carvings, so I was actually really happy with that. So I guess I'll kind of go over and explain the carving portion of the DAT more on the practical side. I'm going to assume that you've already read your DAT preparation manual that you purchased from the CDA. It's not extremely detailed, but it does go over some pretty good information, some general information about the actual carving. It's right here. So I hope to go into a little more detail. I'm not allowed to show you exactly what I carved or give you answers or anything. We had to sign a confidentiality form, but I am allowed to show you this, what I'm going to do in the video, so I guess we'll get started. I'll start with the tools and materials that you'll get when you actually sit down at your carving station for the test. Okay, so when you sit down, you'll see a few different things here. You'll get a paper towel at your station, and you'll have a few things on it. You might have a plastic bag or some kind of bag to put your soap in once you've carved it. You'll also have your actual bar of soap, your ruler, your knife, marker, and a pencil. And I also suggest that you do bring two other things as well. First off, some Band-Aids. These can be really helpful to you, especially if you cut yourself with the knife. If it's your first time, you might be a little nervous during the carving and the knife might slip. So always have a Band-Aid just in case. Open it up too, just to get it ready and stuff. You don't want to be wasting time during the test trying to fumble open with the package and stuff. So always have a Band-Aid just in case. There was a guy when I wrote the test, he actually cut himself a few stations down and he was getting blood all over his soap here, and I felt kind of bad for him, but I think it'd be a little distracting to actually have to worry about bleeding and stuff, so always have a Band-Aid there. And also bring some gloves too. I find that my hands kind of get a little sweaty and the soap gets really slippery, so if you have a pair of gloves, you can bring them and you put them on, and I find that it's really good, it has really good grip instead. So those are two other things that I would suggest that you bring. You don't have to, and you're allowed to if you want to, but you don't have to, so that's just if you want. Anyway, so now you'll also get a booklet too. You're going to see something like, let's see if I can get a view here. You're going to get something that looks like this. It's going to be a little booklet with the cover sheet on here, and on the inside, don't open it yet until you're told to do so, but you'll see your carving views that you'll have to carve, and on the back, I guess, whatever's on the back. So those are going to be the things that you get during the test and the things that you should bring during the test. Now when you do sit down at your station, I do suggest that you do three things. The first is with your ruler. Now I've already done this on my ruler, so I can't really show you. I can explain it though. But there's going to be two layers to your ruler. There's going to be one shiny side here. The back will also be shiny. But if you kind of peel those two layers apart with your thumb, you'll be able to separate them, and you'll be able to actually kind of peel them apart. And I suggest that you take them and peel them right apart and throw it the other side or whatever. But doing that makes your ruler a lot more flexible, and it's a lot easier to actually get it around the soap when you measure it. So, and I'll show you how I do that in a sec too. So I do suggest that you do that. It's a lot easier. It's pretty stiff if you don't do that. So it's up to you, but I just find that a little bit helpful. The second thing is with your knife. When you do get your knife, it'll be, if you take a look at the blade alignment, it's going to be aligned with the little flat part here on the handle. Now I actually saw somebody do this in a video, and after playing around with it, I realized that it is actually kind of helpful. Unscrew and loosen the blade here, and then just pop the blade out and spin it 90 degrees so that it's just 90 degrees to the flat part of the blade here. So if it comes like that, you'll see there's little indentations on the inside. You can't miss the 90 degrees. Just spin it around there and then tighten the blade down. And doing that, actually, when you grip your knife, I usually use my 2 fingers here to rest on the flat part, and then that way you kind of have a little guide for where the plane is, and I find it a lot easier to scrape along the soap with it. So I guess it is helpful to actually adjust your blade, turn it 90 degrees when you actually sit down. And the third thing is make sure you have a sharp pencil or a Sharpie. Some kids may have already used it beforehand, so if it's not sharp, you can actually even use your knife and just kind of go along the felt tip there just to sharpen it up. If your pencil's not sharp, just ask for a new one if you want, but that's critical for the measurements. So those are the things that you should do as soon as you sit down, and get all those things out of the way. Put your gloves on, get your Band-Aid out, sharpen your Sharpie or your pencil, get a new pencil or whatever. Take your blade, turn it 90 degrees, and take your ruler off. And then go ahead and you can start checking your soap and stuff, but don't start carving or anything. That's what you should do ahead of time so that you're not frantically doing that as soon as the time starts. So there is quite a bit of time in the beginning when you sit down trying to get organized, just to organize your stuff, write your name down, and read the instructions over. Don't open your test book, obviously, but that's what I would suggest you do. So that's it for the materials and the tools and stuff. I guess now we'll go on to the actual booklet. Okay, so I'll just move this off to the side for now. Now when you actually open up your booklet, this is going to be your first page here. When you actually open up your booklet, you'll see 3 views here. You're going to see a side view, a top view, and a bottom view. You're not going to see any perspective views. That's going to be up to you to figure out the perspective, to figure out what these 3 views look like in 3D. So you really need to look at these views and visualize them before you start carving. And you do get 5 minutes ahead of time to sit there basically and think about what you're going to do. Think about what this soap is going to look like. Think about how you're going to carve it. Get to know these measurements here before you start carving. Figure out how you're going to exactly lay out your soap. Figure out how you're going to lay your measurements out on your soap, and even how you're going to carve each of these 3 sections, or which order you're going to carve these 3 sections. So you'll always get a soap with 2 ends to be carved and a middle to be carved. Depending on the figure, it could be a tapered end or a flat end here. It might go right, this center cut may go down to the center. It may not go all the way down to the center. That's really up to the measurements for you to decide that. And well, I'll go through that as well in the example that we do. So I'm assuming that you've probably, or hopefully you've already attempted carving the example shown here in the book. Do keep all your carvings too. Even if it's a really bad one, even if it cracks or breaks, do keep it as well, because you can actually check your progress as you go through and just make sure that you're getting better as you actually go. So you can see, I don't know, maybe it's quick, but these were my first few here, and I cracked a few. It's actually a good idea to crack one just to see how much force it does take to crack it, and that way you know not to go too hard or not to go too hard when you're carving. So you can just kind of visually inspect your work as you go and just make sure that you are improving, or you can see what you should have done differently the next time. So going back to what I was just saying, hopefully you have already attempted carving this example here, just so you're kind of familiar with what I'm going to be explaining in the video here and a few of the steps to do and stuff. So without further ado, I guess we'll get started. And what I'll show you here is, let's just pretend we open up our test booklet, and I've just printed off a little diagram here of, it's actually a picture on the computer, but I just made it into a little diagram here just for reference here. And let's just pretend that we got this in our test booklet. So I don't know if you can kind of see that well, but just pause the video here yourself, just press pause and take a look at this and just try to picture this in 3D view. Try to picture exactly how this is going to look in 3D view. I will show you in a second, and I will go over it too, but just for yourself for now, pause the video and try to picture exactly what we are going to carve here.